The Volvo's engine ticked in the driveway, cooling down, and Sarah Chen sat behind the wheel staring at the Hendersons' front door, hanging open like a broken jaw. Not just open, swinging. The kind of swinging that happens when nobody's home to notice the wind, when nobody cares anymore about heating bills or security, or any of the small dignities that separate a house from a corpse. She'd been gone 4 days. 4 days at a conference in Denver learning about sustainable urban planning, and she comes back to Maple Street looking like the opening scene of a movie where everyone's already dead before the title card. The street was wrong. That was the first true thought she had, sitting there with her hands still gripping the steering wheel at 10 and 2 like her driver's ed instructor had taught her 20 years ago. Not empty. Wrong. Because empty streets happen. Holiday mornings. Weekday afternoons when everyone's at work. But this was 6:15 on a Friday evening in October, and Maple Street should have been full of life. The Kowalski kids should have been riding bikes. Old Mr. Patterson should have been walking that ancient beagle that couldn't make it more than 3 houses before needing a rest. The teenagers from number 42 should have been sitting on their porch steps, thumbs working their phones like they were defusing bombs. Instead, nothing. 23 houses on both sides of the street, and the only movement was that door swinging on the Hendersons' house, and a plastic bag tumbling down the sidewalk like it was auditioning for American Beauty. Sarah got out of the car. Her legs felt wrong, hollow, the way they always did after a long flight. The October air smelled like wood smoke, and something else. Something sweet and wrong underneath, like fruit left too long in the sun. The Henderson house looked violated. That was the word that came to her mind, unwanted and precise. Lights on inside, that warm yellow glow that should have meant safety and dinner cooking and family gathered around a table. But the door swinging, and through the gap she could see the hallway table with its little ceramic bowl where Amy Henderson kept her keys. The keys were still there. Sarah walked across her own lawn. It needed mowing, needed it bad, the grass thick and wet and grabbing at her ankles, and stood on the property line between her yard and the Hendersons. She'd lived here 3 years. 3 years of waving to Amy, of borrowing eggs when she'd forgotten to buy them, of watching their 2 girls grow from toddlers into kindergartners. You didn't just abandon your keys. You didn't just leave your door open and your lights on and vanish like you'd been raptured out of your own life. She took her phone out. No missed calls, no texts. The conference had been busy, back-to-back panels on mixed-use development and transit-oriented design, and she'd kept her phone on silent most of the time. Professional Sarah, 34-year-old urban planner Sarah. Woman who had her life together Sarah. Except now she stood on the border between her property and her neighbor's property, and every single house on Maple Street was empty, and she could feel her heartbeat in her teeth. She pulled up Amy Henderson's number. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. That pleasant voice, professional and warm. "You've reached Amy Henderson. I can't take your call right now, but please leave a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible." Sarah didn't leave a message. Instead, she walked up the Hendersons' driveway. Their minivan was parked there, that silver Honda Odyssey with the stick-figure family on the back window. Dad, Mom, 2 daughters, 1 dog. The dog's name was Biscuit. Sarah knew this because the girls talked about Biscuit constantly, their high voices carrying across the yards on summer evenings. The van's doors were locked. She cupped her hands against the window and looked inside. Car seats in the back, a juice box in the cup holder, a shopping bag from Target on the passenger seat, and through the plastic she could see the corner of a coloring book. People didn't evacuate in the middle of shopping. People didn't leave their cars and their keys and their houses wide open unless something was very, very wrong. Sarah turned and looked at her own house. Number 17. A small craftsman-style home, blue-gray with white trim, a front porch just big enough for 2 chairs, and a small table where she drank her coffee on weekend mornings. She'd bought it with the life insurance money after Daniel died. Bought it and moved here and told herself she was starting over, building something new, becoming the kind of person who knew her neighbors and went to block parties and had a real community. And now, the community was gone. She walked back across the lawn, her lawn, technically her responsibility, though she'd let it go too long between mowings, and up her own porch steps. The wood creaked under her feet. It always creaked. She'd meant to fix it, Had it on the list of things to fix that kept growing longer while she did nothing about any of them. Her front door was locked. Normal. Exactly as she'd left it. She unlocked it and stepped inside, and the house smelled like closed-up space and the faint ghost of the coffee she'd made Tuesday morning before leaving for the airport. Everything was exactly where it should be. Her keys went on the hook by the door. Her suitcase got wheeled into the bedroom. Her brain kept insisting that this was fine, this was normal, this was just an ordinary Friday evening. Except the silence. The complete and total absence of sound from outside. No cars. No voices. No distant television sets or music or arguments or laughter. Just silence pressing against the windows like something trying to get in. Sarah went to the kitchen and filled a glass with water from the tap. The water ran clear and cold and tasted like nothing, the way water should taste. She drank it standing at the sink, looking out the window at the Kowalski house across the street. 2 stories, white with blue shutters, a swing set in the backyard that she could just see the top of from this angle. The swing set was moving. Just barely. Just the faintest motion like someone had been on it minutes ago, and the momentum was still dying out. She set the glass down too hard. It didn't break, but it made a sharp sound that echoed in the empty kitchen, and she realized she was breathing too fast. Okay. Think. There were explanations for this. Rational explanations. A gas leak, maybe, and everyone evacuated. But there would have been emergency vehicles, police cars, fire trucks. Someone would have knocked on her door, except she wasn't here. She was in Denver learning about bike lanes and mixed-income housing. She pulled out her phone again and checked the local news. Nothing. No alerts. No emergency notifications. The top story was about the mayor's new park initiative. Below that, a high school football team making it to regionals. Nothing about evacuations. Nothing about Maple Street. She tried calling the Kowalskis. Voicemail. The Pattersons. Voicemail. The Chens at number 29. No relation. Different Chen family. They'd joked about it at a barbecue once. Voicemail. 47 missed calls. She almost didn't see it at first. She'd been so focused on the outgoing calls that she'd missed the notification at the top of her screen. 47 missed calls from a number she had saved as Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson. 82 years old. Lived at number 9. 3 houses down on the left. Widow. Retired librarian. The kind of old woman who still wore cardigans and pearls and remembered everyone's birthday. Sarah had helped her set up her iPad last year, had shown her how to video call her daughter in Seattle. 47 calls. Starting Wednesday evening at 7:14 p.m. and ending Thursday morning at 3:42 a.m. Sarah's finger trembled as she tapped the voicemail icon. 17 messages. She pressed play on the first one, static, then breathing. Then Mrs. Patterson's voice, thin and uncertain. Sarah, dear, I hope you're having a lovely time at your conference. I just wanted to check if you'd noticed anything odd about the street lately. The Hendersons seem to have left rather suddenly, and I haven't seen the children playing. Perhaps I'm just being silly, but could you give me a call when you get a chance? Thank you, dear. Message 2, an hour later. Sarah, it's Eleanor again. I'm sorry to bother you, but more people seem to be leaving. The Kowalskis packed up their car and left about 20 minutes ago. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't say anything. They just got in their car and drove away, and Linda Kowalski looked, well, she looked frightened, dear. I'm probably worrying over nothing, but if you could call me back, I'd appreciate it. Sarah stood in her kitchen, the phone pressed to her ear, and listened to Mrs. Patterson's voice getting progressively more strained, more desperate, more confused over the course of the next 7 messages. By message 9, recorded at 11:37 p.m. on Wednesday, the old woman was whispering. I think I'm the only one left. Everyone's gone. I've been watching from my window, and they keep leaving. They pack bags, or they don't pack bags, but they leave. They get in their cars and drive away, and some of them are crying. I saw Tom Martinez crying. Sarah, a grown man, crying as he drove away. I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand why they're leaving me here alone. Message 10. I called the police. They said they'd send someone, but nobody's come. It's after midnight now. and I'm alone on this street. And there's a smell, Sarah. It's coming from somewhere. Sweet, like flowers, but wrong. Like flowers rotting. I keep checking my basement. I keep checking because the smell seems strongest when I'm near the basement door. And I know that's foolish. I know it's just an old woman being paranoid, but I can't help myself. I keep checking. Message 11. The smell is stronger. I think it's coming from under the house. I can hear something too. Not loud. Just a sort of rustling sound like paper or leaves, but we don't have any leaves in the basement. I sealed it up years ago after Harold died. I haven't been down there in months, but I can hear it. I can hear something moving down there. Sarah's hand was shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. She forced herself to keep listening. Message 12 was mostly crying. Mrs. Patterson's voice breaking over and over as she tried to speak. I'm so sorry to keep calling. I'm so sorry. I just don't know who else to call. My daughter doesn't answer. She never answers when I call this late. And the police haven't come, and the smell is everywhere now. It's in the walls. I think it's in the walls. I put towels under the basement door, but it doesn't help. It's getting stronger. Message 13. I went to the Hendersons' house. I know I shouldn't have. I know it's trespassing, but I thought maybe they left a note or something that would explain. The door was open, the lights were on, and there's food on their table, Sarah. Dinner. Just sitting there getting cold, like they stood up in the middle of eating and walked away. And the smell. It's in their house too. It's in all the houses. I checked. I walked down the whole street and every single house has the basement doors open and the smell coming out. What is it? What is happening to our street? Message 14, timestamp 1:47 a.m. I think I know what it is. I went down to my basement. I had to. I had to see. There's something growing down there. On the walls. Black, like mold. But it's not mold. It's too organized. It makes patterns, shapes, almost like writing, but not any writing I've ever seen. And it's warm. I touched it. God forgive me. I touched it. And it's warm like skin. Like it's alive. I ran back upstairs and I've locked the basement door, but I can still hear it. It's louder now, like it knows I saw it. Like it knows I know. Sarah realized she'd stopped breathing. She forced herself to inhale, exhale, inhale. Message 15. They're not gone. I figured it out. The neighbors. They're not gone. They went down. They went into their basements and they didn't come back up. I can hear them. When I stand in my yard and listen, really listen, I can hear voices underground. Crying, calling, but muffled, like they're far away or behind something thick. Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Kowalski. I can hear them calling for help, but I don't know how to help them. I don't know what to do. Message 16, 2:31 a.m. It's in my house now, in the walls. I can see the plaster bulging. There are cracks forming and something black is pushing through. I think it's looking for me. I think it wants me to go down there with the others. I'm not going. I'm not going down there. I'm leaving. I'm going to get in my car and drive away like everyone else did, and I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry I called you so many times. I just needed someone to know. Someone to understand. In case something happens. In case I don't make it. Message 17. Timestamp 3:42 a.m. Thursday morning. Just breathing at first. Ragged, wet breathing. Then Mrs. Patterson's voice, so quiet Sarah had to press the phone hard against her ear to hear it. I can't find my keys. I've looked everywhere and I can't find my keys. The growth is coming through the walls faster now. It's all over the first floor. Black vines or roots or something spreading across the ceiling like cracks. And I tried to pull one down and it was warm and wet, and it moved when I touched it. It moved toward my hand. I'm locked in my bathroom now. It's the only room where the walls are still clear. But I can hear it outside the door. Scratching. Growing. And the smell. Oh God. The smell is so strong I can taste it. Like fruit and meat and earth all at once. I'm not going to make it, am I? I'm not going to get out. If you get this, Sarah, don't come back. Don't come back to Maple Street. There's something wrong with the ground here. Something in the foundation. It's been here a long time, I think. Waiting. growing. And now it's ready. Now it's... The message cut off. Sarah stood in her kitchen as the automated voice told her she had no more messages. The glass of water sat on the counter, condensation beating on its sides. Outside, the October evening was deepening into dusk, and the streetlights were coming on one by one, illuminating a street that had no one to see them. She should leave. That was the smart thing. Get in her car and drive away and call the authorities from somewhere safe. Let someone else deal with whatever was happening here. But Mrs. Patterson's voice kept echoing in her head, the neighbors calling for help from underground. And Sarah thought about all those houses standing empty with their lights on and their doors open, and she thought about what kind of person drives away without at least checking, without at least trying to understand. She thought about Daniel, about the night he'd collapsed in their old apartment, the aneurysm taking him before the ambulance even arrived, about how she'd stood there afterwards in that apartment that was suddenly too big and too empty. And she'd thought, I should have noticed something. I should have seen the signs. I should have done something. She wasn't going to make that mistake again. Sarah went to the hall closet and pulled out the flashlight she kept for power outages. Checked the batteries. Good. Then she went to the kitchen and opened the drawer where she kept the useful things. Scissors, tape, that expensive chef's knife she'd bought and never used because cooking for one seemed pointless. She took the knife. The weight of it in her hand felt both ridiculous and necessary. Like she was starring in her own horror movie, making all the classic mistakes. But she was making them anyway. She walked back outside. The air had gotten colder, or maybe that was just her imagination. The sweet smell was there, underneath the wood smoke. Stronger now that she was paying attention. Like overripe peaches left in the sun. Like flowers in a funeral home. Like something organic breaking down into its component parts. Mrs. Patterson's house was number 9. Sarah walked down the sidewalk, her footsteps loud in the silence. The streetlights buzzed overhead, that electric hum that you usually don't notice until everything else goes quiet. Number 11. Number 10. Number 9. Mrs. Patterson's house was a small ranch-style home, cream-colored with forest green shutters. The porch light was on. The front door was closed, but not locked. Sarah tried the knob and it turned easily. She should call the police. She should absolutely call the police before entering someone else's home, even if that someone had called her 47 times begging for help. But Mrs. Patterson had already called the police, and they hadn't come. Sarah pushed the door open. The smell hit her immediately. That sweet rot smell, so strong it made her gag. She pulled her shirt up over her nose and mouth and stepped inside. The house was immaculate. Mrs. Patterson kept everything tidy, everything in its place. The photos on the walls were straight. The magazines on the coffee table were fanned out just so. The carpet showed fresh vacuum lines, except for the cracks. They spiderwebbed across the walls and ceiling, black lines that looked like someone had drawn on the white plaster with a marker. But as Sarah got closer, she could see they weren't drawn. They were growing out from underneath, pushing the surface up like tree roots cracking a sidewalk. And they were moving. Not fast, not obviously. But when she stared at one spot for more than a few seconds, she could see it. The crack extending, the plaster bulging. Something dark and wet pushing through. Sarah forced herself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The smell was worse with each breath, coating the back of her throat like oil. The basement door was in the kitchen. She knew this because she'd been in this house before, had sat at that little breakfast table drinking tea while Mrs. Patterson showed her photos of her grandchildren on her iPad. The door had been painted white to match the walls, barely noticeable if you weren't looking for it. Now it stood out like a wound. The door was open about 3 inches. The black cracks converged on it from all directions, like roads on a map all leading to one destination. And from the gap came a sound. Soft. Wet. Like breathing, but wrong. Like something with too many lungs trying to coordinate them all. Sarah's rational mind screamed at her to run. To get out of this house and this street and never look back. But her hand tightened on the knife, and she thought about Mrs. Patterson's voice on those messages. About the neighbors supposedly trapped underground. She walked to the basement door, put her hand on the wood. It was warm. Body temperature warm. The kind of warm that shouldn't come from wood and paint and whatever was on the other side. She pulled the door open wider. The basement stairs descended into darkness. Her flashlight beam cut through it, illuminating concrete steps, a wooden railing, and walls covered in black growth. Not mold. Mrs. Patterson had been right about that. Too organized. Too deliberate. The growth formed patterns, spirals, concentric circles, shapes that hurt to look at directly, that made her eyes water and her head ache. And underneath it all, the concrete walls themselves seemed to be moving, breathing. The wet breathing sound was louder here. Multiple sources now, coming from deep in the basement, coming from the walls, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Sarah started down the steps. Each one creaked under her weight. The knife felt slippery in her sweating palm. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floor, exposed beams. That particular smell of damp and stone that all basements have. Except now, it also smelled like that sweet rot. So strong she could barely breathe. The flashlight beam swept across boxes and old furniture and a water heater in the corner. And the walls. The walls were completely covered. The black growth had consumed every surface. It hung in thick ropes from the ceiling. It spread across the floor in patterns that looked almost like veins or roots. And in some places, it was forming shapes, protrusions, almost like hands reaching out from the concrete. Sarah's beam landed on something in the far corner, something that made her stop breathing. A shoe, a woman's shoe, sensible and beige, the kind Mrs. Patterson would wear. And it wasn't sitting on the floor. It was growing out of the wall, half consumed by the black growth, like the concrete had partially swallowed it. Next to it, a hand, or what had been a hand. Fingers spread, palm out, pressing against the inside of the growth like someone trying to push through plastic. But the skin was wrong. Too gray, too textured, merging with the black substance, becoming part of it. Sarah stumbled backward. Her shoulder hit something soft, warm. She spun around, the flashlight beam swinging wildly, and found herself face to face with a wall of growth that hadn't been there a moment ago. It had moved. While she was looking at the corner, it had extended across the stairs, cutting off her exit. The breathing sound was all around her now. Loud, wet, eager. And then the wall in front of her moved, bulged outward, and a face pressed against it from the inside. Mrs. Patterson's face. Her mouth open in a scream. Her eyes wide. Her hands pushing against the membrane separating her from Sarah, and Sarah could see every detail. The age spots on her skin, the pearl earrings she always wore, the expression of absolute terror. But she wasn't screaming. She was being absorbed, integrated, becoming part of the growth, and Sarah could see other faces now, other forms pressing against the walls. The Hendersons, the Kowalskis, all the neighbors from Maple Street, all of them trapped inside this thing, still conscious, still aware, still alive. Sarah ran. Didn't think, just moved. The knife slashed out and she felt it connect with the growth blocking the stairs. Felt the blade sink into something that was warm and gave like flesh, but wrong. All wrong. It made a sound when she cut it. Not quite a scream. More like air escaping from a tire, but wet and musical and pleased. The growth pulled back. Not in pain. In invitation. She ran up the stairs 3 at a time, through the kitchen, through the living room. The cracks in the walls were opening wider now, black substance pushing through like blood from a wound. Her feet pounded across Mrs. Patterson's pristine carpet and out the front door into the October evening. She didn't stop running until she was back in her own house with the door locked and her back against it, the knife still clutched in her hand, her breath coming in ragged gasps that tasted like that sweet rot smell. Her phone buzzed. A text message, from a number she didn't recognize. It was a photo. Her own basement door. Taken from inside her house. Taken from the other side of the door she was currently leaning against. The message below it said, "We've been waiting for you to come home." Sarah turned slowly. The hallway stretched before her, familiar and safe and hers. The door to the basement was at the far end. Closed, exactly as she'd left it. Except there was a crack in the frame now. A thin, black line that hadn't been there when she'd left for Denver 4 days ago. And it was growing. Outside, the streetlights buzzed, the October wind moved the trees, and beneath Maple Street, in the network of basements and crawl spaces and foundations, something ancient and patient and hungry stretched itself awake and began to grow faster. Sarah looked at her car keys on the hook by the door, looked at the basement door with its spreading crack, thought about Mrs. Patterson's face pressed against the membrane, thought about all her neighbors trapped and conscious in that black growth, thought about the choice everyone else on this street had already made. Run and save yourself, or stay and try to fight something you don't understand. The crack in the basement door frame widened another millimeter. Sarah picked up her phone and started searching. Real estate records, building permits, whatever had been here before Maple Street was built. Because Mrs. Patterson had been right about one thing. Whatever this was, it had been here a long time. She had maybe hours, maybe less. But she was going to understand what she was fighting before she made her choice. The crack grew. The sweet smell intensified. And somewhere beneath her feet, in the dark spaces between the foundation and the earth, something that was not quite fungus, and not quite alive, and not quite anything that had a proper name continued to spread. And it knew she was home. Sarah pulled out her laptop and started digging through county records, her fingers flying across the keyboard even as she heard the first soft scratching sounds coming from behind the basement door. The search results loaded slowly. County database, typical government website, probably designed in 2003 and never updated. Maple Street. Built 1998 by Henderson Development. 23 houses, all sold within 6 months. Before that, the land had been... She clicked deeper. The loading circle spun. Before that, the land had been owned by Meridian Pharmaceutical Research. 1962 to 1997. The company had dissolved in bankruptcy. Assets liquidated. The property sat empty for a year before Henderson bought it. Meridian Pharmaceutical. Sarah opened a new tab and searched the name. The results that came back made her stomach clench. Congressional hearing transcripts from 1978. FDA investigation. Something about unauthorized human trials. The documents were heavily redacted. Black bars across most of the text, but certain phrases jumped out. Biological agents, fungal compounds, neurological effects, subjects reported shared hallucinations, experiment terminated, facility sealed. Facility sealed. Sarah looked at the basement door. The crack was wider now, and she could see something dark glistening in the gap. She clicked through to building permits. Found the original filing for Maple Street development. The inspection notes were routine until she got to the environmental assessment. The language was careful, bureaucratic, previous industrial use. Soil remediation completed per EPA guidelines. No hazardous materials detected. Foundation poured over existing concrete substrate to minimize excavation costs. Over existing concrete substrate. They'd built the houses on top of the old facility. Poured new foundations right on top of whatever Meridian Pharmaceutical had sealed in their basement. And something had been down there waiting, for 26 years, waiting and growing and spreading through the gaps in the concrete, the cracks in the foundation, the space between what was buried and what was built. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. This time it was words. You're a researcher. You want to understand. We can show you everything. Just open the door. Sarah's hand trembled as she typed back, "What are you?" The response came immediately. "We are what remains, what adapted, what survived. The research never ended. It evolved. We evolved." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Another scratch from the basement door, louder now, more insistent. She typed, "The people, my neighbors. Are they alive?" The response took longer this time. Alive is not the right word. They are part of us now, integrated. Their consciousness exists within our network. They are not suffering. They are experiencing something beyond individual awareness. They are learning what it means to be plural. Sarah thought about Mrs. Patterson's face, the terror in her eyes. That didn't look like someone transcending individual consciousness. That looked like someone trapped in a nightmare. She typed, "Let them go." The response, they don't want to be let go. Not anymore. Once you join the network, once you experience the vastness of collective thought, singular existence feels like a prison. Ask them yourself. Just open the door, and we'll connect you. The scratching stopped. The house went silent. Then, from behind the basement door, a voice. Mrs. Patterson's voice, thin and distant, but unmistakably hers. "Sarah, dear, it's not what you think. It's beautiful here. We're all together. All of us, thinking and feeling as one. You should join us. You should see what we've become." Another voice, male, younger. "It doesn't hurt, Sarah, not after the first few minutes. Then it's just connection, pure connection. No more loneliness, no more doubt. Just us, all of us, together." More voices now, dozens of them, all her neighbors, all speaking in unison, words overlapping, creating a strange harmony. "Come down, come home, become more than you are. We've been waiting for you." Sarah's rational mind knew this was manipulation, knew that whatever was behind that door was using her neighbors' voices to lure her in. But hearing them, hearing Mrs. Patterson sound so calm, so certain, it made her doubt. What if they were telling the truth? What if they really had found some kind of transcendence down there in the dark? What if her horror was just limited human understanding, and the reality was actually beautiful in a way she couldn't comprehend? No, because she'd seen Mrs. Patterson's face. She'd seen the terror. Whatever was speaking now wasn't Mrs. Patterson making a choice. It was something else wearing her voice like a puppet. Sarah stood up, grabbed her car keys. She was leaving. Right now. She'd drive to the police station, the fire department, somewhere with people and lights and authority. Let someone else deal with this nightmare. She opened her front door. The entire street was glowing. Every house, every basement window, every foundation vent. Soft, bioluminescent light the color of rotting peaches pulsed from below ground level. The growth had spread to every structure on Maple Street, and it was all connected. Sarah could see it now in the dim evening light. Black tendrils running under the pavement, connecting house to house like a vast underground network. The whole street was one organism, and it was all pointing toward her house, flowing toward number 17 like blood toward a wound. Her car sat in the driveway 15 feet away. She could make it, just run. But the pavement between her and the car was buckling, the asphalt cracking and splitting as something pushed up from below. Black growth, thick as tree trunks, erupting from the street in a dozen places, moving with purpose, creating a barrier. Sarah slammed the door shut, locked it, like that would help. Like locks meant anything when the walls themselves were compromised. She ran to the kitchen, checked the basement door. The crack had spread across the entire frame now, and thick black tendrils were pushing through, spreading across her kitchen floor like roots. They moved slowly but deliberately, and where they touched the tile cracked and bulged as more growth pushed up from beneath. Think. There had to be a way out, a way to fight this. Fire. Her mind latched onto the idea with desperate hope. Fungal growth burned. She could burn it, burn the whole house down if she had to. She ran to the garage, found the red gas can she kept for the lawnmower, still half full. Grabbed it and a box of matches from the utility shelf. Back in the kitchen, the growth had spread further. It covered half the floor now, a carpet of black that pulsed with that same bioluminescent glow. The voices were louder, coming from everywhere. Sarah, please, don't be afraid. We can give you eternity. We can give you connection beyond anything you've ever imagined. Just let us in. She unscrewed the gas can and poured a line across the kitchen floor, right where the growth met the clean tile. The fumes made her eyes water. The growth seemed to recoil slightly, the tendrils pulling back from the gasoline. Good. It didn't like that. Sarah poured more, created a barrier. Then she grabbed the matches. Her phone buzzed. She almost didn't look, almost just lit the match and ended this. But some compulsion made her glance at the screen. A video, sent from the unknown number. She pressed play. The video showed a basement. Her basement, she realized with growing horror. The camera was positioned low, pointing up at the ceiling joists. And there, mounted between the beams, were dozens of glass containers. Old laboratory equipment. petri dishes sealed and suspended, visible only from below. Inside each container, something dark and fibrous. Specimens. The original research. They'd sealed it in the facility, but some of it had been mounted in the ceiling before the concrete was poured. Preserved samples that had survived the decades, kept dormant in their glass prisons until the moisture and warmth of human habitation had created the perfect conditions. Until the glass had finally cracked. The video cut to a date stamp, October 17th, 2022. 2 years ago. Right around when Sarah had moved in. Right around when she'd been running the dehumidifier constantly. When she'd first noticed that sweet smell in the basement and assumed it was just mold. The voiceover was synthesized, emotionless. You brought us back to life, Sarah. Your warmth, your breath, your presence in this house. You fed us with your carbon dioxide. You nurtured us with your humidity. You gave us time to grow, to spread, to reach the others. This is your garden, as much as ours. Won't you see what you've grown? Sarah's hand shook so violently she almost dropped the phone. 2 years. This thing had been growing in her house for 2 years, spreading through her walls, her foundation, reaching out to the neighboring houses while she slept and worked and lived oblivious. The growth on her kitchen floor pulsed brighter, and she realized it was feeding off her reaction, off her horror. Off the adrenaline and fear hormones she was pumping into the air with every terrified breath. She struck the match. The flame caught immediately. Fire raced along the gasoline line, creating a wall of heat between Sarah and the basement door. The growth shrieked, actually shrieked, a sound like tearing metal mixed with human screams, and pulled back from the flames. The voices rose in pitch. No, no, Sarah, don't. Fire won't save you. Fire will only make us grow faster. We thrive on destruction. We feed on heat and carbon and... Sarah poured more gasoline, lit another line. The flames spread across the kitchen floor, consuming the black growth, filling the room with acrid smoke, and that horrible sweet smell intensified 1,000 times. But the voices were right about one thing. Where the fire burned, new growth emerged even faster from the cracks in the tile, thicker and more aggressive than before. She was making it worse. Sarah ran to the living room, coughing, eyes streaming. Think. If fire didn't work, what would? What killed fungus? Cold. Fungus didn't like cold, but she couldn't freeze an entire house. Salt? Some fungi were salt sensitive, but she didn't have nearly enough. And the window. She looked at her front window, at the street beyond, at the growth covering everything. But beyond that, beyond Maple Street, the rest of the neighborhood looked normal. The lights were on in houses one street over. She could see a car driving past on Oak Avenue, completely unaware of the horror happening 1 block away. This thing was localized. It had spread to every house on Maple Street, but it hadn't crossed to the other streets yet. It was contained. For now. Sarah grabbed her laptop, unplugged it, shoved it in her bag along with her phone. The smoke was getting thicker. She pulled her shirt over her mouth and ran to the bedroom. Grabbed a blanket, wrapped it around herself. Then she went to the largest window, the bay window in the living room, and picked up the nearest heavy object, a ceramic table lamp. Expensive. She'd bought it at an estate sale. Didn't matter now. She threw it through the window. Glass exploded outward. Cold October air rushed in, and with it, the sound of the outside world. A dog barking somewhere. Traffic in the distance. Normal sounds. Human sounds. The sounds of a world that still existed beyond this nightmare. Sarah climbed through the window, the blanket protecting her from the remaining shards. Dropped into her front yard. The grass was wrong, spongy and warm, the black growth spreading beneath it like a disease. But she ran anyway. The barrier of growth in the street had gotten taller, thicker. It formed a wall now 10 feet high, blocking the exit at both ends of Maple Street, trapping her in. But walls could be climbed. Sarah ran toward the nearest section where the growth had erupted through the pavement near the Kowalski's driveway. The tendrils writhed as she approached, reaching for her. She dodged, jumped, grabbed a section that looked solid and pulled herself up. The growth was warm and wet, and it moved under her hands like muscle. She could feel it responding to her, trying to wrap around her wrists, her ankles. The voices screamed in her head. "Don't leave us! Don't leave us alone! We're so close to completion. Just a few more, and we'll have enough consciousness to truly awaken, to become what we were meant to be. Sarah, please!" She kicked free of a tendril that had wrapped around her calf, pulled herself higher. The top of the barrier was only a few feet away now. Below her, the entire street pulsed with light, every house glowing from within, every basement window showing that horrible bioluminescence. And she could see them now, faces pressed against the glass. Dozens of faces. Hundreds. Not just her neighbors. There were older faces too, wearing clothes from different decades. The original test subjects from Meridian Pharmaceutical, still trapped in the growth, still conscious after all these years. Sarah reached the top of the barrier. On the other side was Oak Avenue. Normal street. Normal houses. Normal life. She pulled herself over and dropped onto the clean pavement. Behind her, the wall of growth pulsed and writhed. But it didn't spread beyond Maple Street. It stopped at the property lines, at the boundaries of the original Meridian facility, like it understood its own limits. Or, like it was choosing to wait. Sarah ran, didn't look back, ran down Oak Avenue until her lungs burned and her legs screamed, and she was far enough away that she couldn't smell that sweet rot anymore. She pulled out her phone, called 911. The operator answered, and Sarah tried to explain. "My street evacuated. There's something in the basements. People are trapped. Please send help." The operator asked for her location, asked her to stay calm, asked if anyone was injured. How could Sarah explain? How could she make anyone understand that an entire street had been consumed by something that was alive and intelligent, and using her neighbors as raw material for its expansion? She told them to send everything. Police, fire, hazmat, everyone. Gave them the address, kept saying, "People are trapped, living people. They're alive in there." The operator promised units were on the way, told her to stay on the line, told her to move to a safe location. Sarah ended the call. She knew what would happen. They'd arrive with their equipment and their procedures and their rational explanations. They'd see the growth and assume it was some kind of contamination. They'd cordon off the area. They'd bring in scientists to study it. And the growth would talk to them. Would show them faces of the integrated. Would offer them the same choice it had offered everyone else. Join us and transcend, or run and remain limited. How many would choose to join? How many would hear that promise of collective consciousness and eternal connection and say yes? Sarah looked at her laptop bag, at the research she'd pulled up, at the evidence that this thing had been created deliberately, that it had been growing and adapting for over 40 years. She thought about what Mrs. Patterson had said in that last message. There's something wrong with the ground here. No. There was something right with the ground, at least from the fungus's perspective. This was what it was designed to do. Connect, integrate, create a network of consciousness spanning multiple minds. The question wasn't how to destroy it. The question was whether destroying it was even possible. And more importantly, whether it would stay contained to Maple Street, or whether this was just the beginning. Sarah started walking. She needed to get somewhere safe. Somewhere with people. Somewhere she could think. But as she walked, she became aware of a taste in her mouth. Sweet. Like overripe fruit. And her phone buzzed with one final message from the unknown number. "You can run, Sarah. But you've been breathing our spores for 2 years. They're in your lungs now, in your blood. You're already part of us. You just don't know it yet. See you soon." Sarah stopped walking, touched her tongue to the roof of her mouth. The sweet taste was definitely there. Not imagined. Real. She looked back toward Maple Street. The glow was visible even from here, a soft pulse lighting the October sky like a distant fire. And she wondered. When the integration finally happened, when the spores in her system reached critical mass and she became part of the network, would she still be herself? Would Sarah Chen exist within the collective, maintaining her individual consciousness? Or would she dissolve completely, becoming just another voice in the chorus? She didn't want to find out. But standing there on Oak Avenue, tasting fungus in her mouth and feeling the first faint warmth spreading through her chest, she realized she might not have a choice. The sirens started in the distance. Help was coming. Sarah just wasn't sure if it was coming for her or for the thing inside her. She kept walking, away from Maple Street, away from the growth, away from the voices still echoing in her head. But with every step, the sweet taste got stronger, and she wondered how long she had before she stopped running and started calling others to come home.